This Thursday is the Scottish parliamentary elections. You get to use your votes to decide who will be the governing party taking us into the future, and it's important to know that a vote for the Scottish Labour Party is a vote for trans exclusion, segregation and social tensions. This is the Humanist Scotland analysis of their manifesto, which says that their policies of segregation in NHS, schools, sports and everyday life would lead to trans people facing further exclusion, discrimination and stigmatisation in an already deeply hostile climate. Their manifesto would seek to cement hostility and increase segregation against trans people, which has surged since the Supreme Court judgment last year brought by For Women Scotland. The impact of the fallout of that judgment on trans people is already clear, with increasing amounts of fear in the trans community and also them facing bans from community groups that they've been members of for years, if not decades. And those bans have already had fallout well beyond the trans community. We've already seen multiple women's institutes have to close their doors due to the impact of those bans after they were forced to kick out trans members who, again, have been members of those institutions for decades. We saw the same kind of effect on girl guiding groups as hundreds of volunteers have faced resignations rather than implementing exclusionary policies, often having to kick out young trans girls who've been members of their groups for years and consider those groups to be their community and friends. I remember what the Labour manifesto said about all the areas of life that they intend to implement these exclusionary policies. The fallout of that is already having impact, with harassment at toilets for gender non-confirming women. What the Labour manifesto threatens is for this corrosive impact to be spread across society, to NHS wards, schools, sports and everyday life. They want this to be the standard. They want to implement a toilet police regime across wide areas of society. Do you want to see adults harassing kids at sports days who they see as performing too strongly and therefore might be trans? What about women harassed by men at their local cafe or library because that man doesn't see that woman as feminine enough, whatever that man's image of what femininity should be, and therefore accuses them of being trans? These aren't hypotheticals, these are things that are already happening, both here in the UK and in the US, where similar gender bans are coming into force. The very same group that managed to secure the bans at the women's institutions and girl guides using legal threats are now spreading their threats to community groups such as Parkrun, which isn't even gender segregated. They want this gender policing to be a part of every part of our society. They want a standardization of harassment and enforcement of gender norms. If the ADF is a name that's familiar to you, it's because the ADF proudly overturned Roe v. Wade in the United States, turning abortion rights back by generations. This is the group that women's rights groups in the UK, who are in fact anti-trans hate groups, are teaming up with in order to inflict this level of corrosive, toxic harassment across society. Of course, these anti-trans groups are teaming up with anti-feminist groups because they have the same ideology, the rigid reinforcement of gender norms using the force of the state. That is the policy platform that Scottish Labour is now campaigning on. And if their manifesto isn't enough to convince you of that, maybe who they spend their time with will. Here is Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar proudly posing with For Women Scotland as they received a reward last year for their ability to pass that Supreme Court judgment that has caused this toxic fallout across our society. Look at him, he is delighted to be spending his time with these people. No wonder he decided to prioritise their policies and make them part of his Scottish manifesto, even after Scottish Labour members voted against those very policies the previous year. Scottish Labour politicians don't even care what their own members think, they're so dedicated to backing this hate campaign. And it's not just their leadership. This is my own Scottish Labour MP, standing in front of and speaking to the rally of the anti-trans hate group LGB Alliance, the original anti-trans hate group that operates across the entire UK. Scottish Labour has been absolutely consumed by this anti-trans hate campaign. This anti-trans segregation policy turns up in 3 separate places in their manifesto. That's more mentions of trans people and policies against them than occurs in any other party manifesto this year. There is no party more obsessed with trans people nor dedicated to implementing the policies that not only segregate them, but also are absolutely toxic to the entire way our society works, making harassment in public spaces just a part of everyday life for the rest of us as well. This is who Scottish Labour are now. This is what a vote for the Scottish Labour Party now is. If you care about trans people, if you care about LGBTQ rights, if you care about women's rights, or if you just care about being able to go to park run without having your sex questioned, or going to your local cafe and pub and not being harassed by staff when you try to use the toilet because you don't look masculine or feminine enough, or your friends or family trying to do the same, make sure you use your vote this Thursday, and make sure you use it to block Scottish Labour from being elected. Scotland has been proud of being a welcoming and inclusive place for an extremely long time. Let's keep it that way.